3:42. The sun had barely risen when 12-year-old Ethan wandered along the narrow street leading to the edge of the city park. His shoes were worn thin, his backpack patched in several places, and his hands still cold from the early morning air. He was used to collecting cans and bottles before school, small efforts to help his mother, who worked double shifts cleaning offices downtown. That morning, something caught his eye near the bench where he usually rested. It shimmered faintly under the weak sunlight. Curious, he crouched down and brushed away a few leaves. What he found made him freeze. It was a watch, but not any ordinary watch. The metal gleamed with a quiet luxury. Its surface reflected the morning sky like a mirror. Ethan turned it over carefully. The back was engraved with delicate letters, "To William Turner, for a lifetime of success." He didn't know the name, but he knew enough to realize this watch was worth more than his family's entire savings. For a long moment, he simply stared at it. He thought about what people in his neighborhood might do: sell it, hide it, or pretend they never saw it. But something inside him refused. The thought of keeping what wasn't his made his stomach twist. He slipped the watch into his pocket and looked toward the main street, where buses rolled by and expensive cars glided past. Somewhere out there was the man who had lost it. Someone rich, someone who probably didn't even realize what he still had. Ethan decided right then that he would find him. He didn't know how, but he would try. After school, Ethan clutched the watch tightly in his pocket as he walked across town. He had spent his lunch break asking a few people if they had heard of a man named William Turner. Most had shrugged, but one older shopkeeper had pointed toward the hill on the far side of the city. "If it's that Turner," he said, "he owns the big house near the lake, the one with the iron gates." The house wasn't just big, it was enormous, like something from another world. The gates were taller than any he had ever seen, and behind them stretched a garden so perfect it looked painted. Ethan hesitated at the entrance, feeling small and out of place. His reflection in the gate's polished bars reminded him who he was, a boy with torn sleeves and dirt on his shoes. Still, he pressed the doorbell. A security guard appeared moments later, tall and expressionless. "Can I help you?" he asked. Ethan swallowed. "I think I found something that belongs to Mr. Turner," he said quietly, holding up the watch. The man's eyes widened slightly, and he disappeared without another word. A few minutes later, a voice echoed from the intercom. "Let the boy in." The gate opened with a mechanical hum, and Ethan stepped through, his heart racing. The garden smelled of roses and trimmed grass. Each step felt heavier than the last. At the end of the stone path stood a man in his 60s, dressed in a crisp grey suit, his face lined with age and authority. He stared at the boy, then at the watch. "That," he said slowly, "is something I never thought I'd see again." For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. The man's presence filled the air, calm but heavy, like the weight of years lived in power. William Turner stepped closer, his polished shoes silent on the stone path. His eyes, a sharp grey, studied the boy before him. "Where did you find this?" he asked. His voice wasn't angry, but it carried a quiet authority that made Ethan's hands tremble. "In the park, sir," Ethan replied, barely above a whisper. "Near the benches by the old fountain. I was picking up bottles, and it was just there." Turner took the watch carefully, almost reverently. His thumb brushed across the engraving, as though touching an old memory. Then he looked at Ethan again. "Do you know what this is worth?" Ethan hesitated. "A lot, I think." "More than you can imagine," Turner said softly. But instead of the harsh judgment Ethan expected, there was a note of wonder in his tone. "And yet you brought it back." The boy shifted awkwardly. It didn't feel right to keep it. Turner studied him for a long time. The boy's clothes were old, his face thin, but his eyes were honest, Something inside Turner, something he had buried under decades of deals and profit, stirred. He gestured toward the house. "Come inside. You look like you could use something to eat." Ethan's instinct told him to say no, but hunger and curiosity won. The house was a cathedral of marble and glass, walls lined with paintings that looked older than anything he'd ever seen. As he sat at a table far too big for two people, Turner placed the watch gently beside them. "You have no idea," he murmured, "how much this means to me." As Ethan ate slowly, almost afraid to touch the silverware, William Turner watched him with quiet curiosity. The boy ate like someone who wasn't used to having enough, careful, grateful, deliberate. When the plate was empty, Turner leaned back and said, "That watch you found, it belonged to my son." Ethan froze. He hadn't expected that. Turner's gaze drifted toward the window, where the light had begun to fade. "He gave it to me before he left for university 15 years ago. Said it was his way of reminding me to take time for what matters. I didn't listen." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. "We argued the night before his accident, harsh words, pride on both sides. He never came home." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Turner nodded slowly. "I thought I'd lost the watch forever. It must have fallen from my wrist a few days ago near that park. I go there sometimes. It's where I used to walk with him when he was your age." Silence filled the room. The ticking of an antique clock echoed faintly, steady and slow, as if marking the rhythm of regret. Ethan finally asked, "Do you think he'd be proud of you now?" Turner looked up sharply, then sighed. "I don't know, son. I've built everything money can buy, except peace." The boy hesitated, then said quietly, "Maybe this watch came back so you could start over." For the first time, Turner smiled. Not the practiced smile of a businessman, but the fragile human smile of a man remembering what it meant to feel. "You may be right," he said. "Maybe it's time I did." The next morning, William Turner asked his driver to take Ethan home. But as they stood outside the mansion, something about the boy's quiet dignity made him hesitate. "Before you go," he said, "I'd like to know more about you." Ethan looked down, embarrassed. "There's not much to know, sir. My mum and I live on the east side. She cleans offices at night. I try to help a little after school." Turner nodded thoughtfully. "Does your father work too?" The boy hesitated, then shook his head. "He left when I was 5. The older man's heart tightened. For a moment he saw his younger self in the boy. The same hunger to be seen, to prove something. "You remind me of someone I once was," Turner said softly. "Someone who believed that doing the right thing mattered more than what it cost." Ethan looked up, surprised. "My mom says that too. She says being poor doesn't mean you have to be small." Turner smiled faintly. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." They rode together in silence. When they reached the rundown apartment building where Ethan lived, the millionaire's polished car looked almost absurd among the cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. As Ethan stepped out, Turner called after him, "You kept the watch safe when most wouldn't have. That says something about who you are. Don't ever lose that." Ethan nodded. "I won't, sir. And thank you for breakfast." Turner watched him go until the boy disappeared inside. The street felt colder without him. As the driver pulled away, Turner touched the watch on his wrist. For the first time in years, its ticking didn't remind him of time lost, but of something worth rebuilding. When Turner returned to his company headquarters that afternoon, the familiar rhythm of meetings, reports, and phone calls felt strangely hollow. His assistant greeted him with a list of appointments, but the words blurred together. For years, he had measured his success by the size of his buildings and the number of zeros on his contracts. Now, all he could think about was a boy who had chosen honesty over survival. He walked into his office, a vast room of glass and steel overlooking the city. Everything gleamed, everything looked perfect. Yet it all seemed lifeless. The expensive watch ticked softly on his wrist, a quiet heartbeat in the emptiness. He sat at his desk and stared at an old photo on the shelf, himself with his son, both smiling, both younger, unaware of what time would take from them. For the first time he whispered aloud, "I'm sorry." A knock interrupted his thoughts. It was his secretary. "Mr. Turner, the charity board is waiting for your approval on the budget." He hesitated, then said, "Double the donation. Make sure it goes to the youth program downtown, the one that helps kids stay in school." She blinked, surprised. "Right away, sir." When she left, Turner leaned back in his chair. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Not a way to erase his past, but to honor it. He opened his planner, usually filled with deadlines, and scribbled one sentence across the next page: "Visit Ethan and his mother." Then he closed the book. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like chasing time. He felt like catching up with life instead. 2 days later, William Turner found himself standing in front of the same cracked apartment building where he had left Ethan. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, and somewhere inside, a baby cried. His expensive shoes clicked awkwardly on the worn concrete steps. It was a place he'd never imagined himself entering, and yet somehow it felt necessary. He knocked on the door marked 3B. A woman's voice called, "Just a second!" Moments later, the door opened to reveal a tired but kind-faced woman in her 40s. She froze when she saw him. "Mr. Turner?" Ethan appeared behind her, eyes wide. "Mom, this is the man I told you about." Turner smiled gently. "I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to thank you for raising a son with such integrity." The woman's eyes softened. "You don't need to thank me, sir. He just did what he thought was right." Turner stepped inside when invited. The apartment was small but spotless, the scent of soap and coffee lingering in the air. On the table sat a stack of bills neatly organized, a single potted plant reaching for the light through a cracked window. They talked for a while, about school, about work, about life. Turner listened more than he spoke, and every word from the woman and her son felt like a mirror, reflecting everything he'd forgotten about kindness. Before leaving, he handed her an envelope. "Please," he said quietly, "accept this. Consider it a thank you, not charity." She hesitated, but his sincerity was undeniable. "Thank you, Mr. Turner," she said softly. As he stepped back into the grey afternoon, the millionaire realized he hadn't just visited them. He had rediscovered something long lost, a piece of himself. That evening, back at his mansion, William Turner sat in his study, staring at the watch resting on his desk. It ticked quietly in the soft glow of the lamp, a reminder of the strange chain of events that had begun with a poor boy and a park bench. He thought of Ethan and his mother, of their humility, their strength. The more he reflected, the more he felt that keeping the watch no longer made sense. It had been his son's, yes, but perhaps it was meant to teach him something greater than memory. He picked it up, running his thumb along the engraving once more. For a lifetime of success. Turner whispered to himself, maybe success means something different now. The next morning, he called his driver again. "We're going back to the east side," he said simply. When Ethan opened the door, surprise lit his face. "Mr. Turner, did you forget something?" Turner smiled and held out the watch. "No, Ethan. I came to return this to the person who truly found its meaning." The boy shook his head quickly. "I can't take that, sir. It's yours." Turner placed the watch gently in his hand. "It was my son's once, but he would have liked you, honest, brave. You remind me of him. Keep it, not for the value, but for what it stands for." Ethan's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "I'm certain," Turner said. "Time has a way of finding the right hands." The boy clutched it close, speechless. Turner smiled, his eyes moist. "Just promise me one thing, that you'll use your time well." Ethan nodded slowly. "I will, sir, I promise." Days passed, and the city began to bloom with early spring light. Ethan wore the watch carefully, never as a show of wealth, but as a quiet reminder. He never took it to school. He was afraid it might get scratched or lost again. Instead, he placed it every night beside his bed, where the soft ticking filled the silence of their apartment like a heartbeat of hope. For the first time, his mother noticed a change in him. He spoke about the future, about studying harder, about helping people someday. "Maybe I can fix things, Mom," he said one evening, "like Mr. Turner does." She smiled, brushing his hair back. "You'll fix more than things, Ethan. You'll fix people's hearts." Meanwhile, William Turner's world had shifted too. His board of directors noticed it first. He was calmer, less impatient. He asked about the employees' families. He even cancelled a weekend business retreat to visit a youth shelter instead. The staff whispered that something had changed the old man, softened him. One afternoon, he received a letter with shaky handwriting. Inside was a simple note. "Thank you for believing in me. I'll make you proud." Attached was a drawing. The watch, surrounded by rays of light. Turner smiled. He placed the note on his desk next to his son's old photo. For the first time in years, the two symbols of his life, loss and renewal, stood side by side. As the sun dipped beyond the skyline, Turner whispered to the empty room, "You already have, Ethan." And somewhere across the city, a boy looked at his watch and smiled, unaware that two lives had begun again, bound by honesty, time, and an act of pure heart. That night, William Turner sat alone in his study, the city lights flickering through the tall windows. He thought about Ethan's face when he had handed him the watch, the disbelief, the gratitude, the innocence. For decades, Turner had believed that power came from control and wealth, but now he realized it came from connection, from the courage to give without expecting anything back. He picked up the phone and called his financial advisor. "I want to start a foundation," he said. "Something that supports kids like Ethan, scholarships, mentorship, real opportunities." The man on the other end stammered, "A foundation, sir. That's quite a change." "Yes," Turner replied softly. "It's time for a change." He hung up and leaned back in his chair. Outside, rain began to fall against the glass, slow, steady, cleansing. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat on the floor doing his homework by the dim light of a desk lamp. Every few minutes, his eyes wandered to the watch beside his notebook. Its gentle ticking reminded him that time could mean more than hours and minutes. It could mean purpose. He had written a short essay for school titled, "The Day I Met a Rich Man." It wasn't about money. It was about choices, about kindness, about what it meant to be good when no one was watching. The next morning, when his teacher read it aloud to the class, even she had to pause for a moment. Far away, in his office overlooking the city, William Turner didn't know about the essay. But he felt something that told him the world was already changing, one honest boy at a time. A few months later, William Turner stood in front of a newly built community center. The building gleamed under the afternoon sun, its entrance marked with simple letters, the Ethan Foundation, for honesty and hope. He had named it quietly, without announcement, without fanfare. Only a handful of people knew the story behind the name. That morning, he had sent an invitation to Ethan and his mother. Now, as a modest car pulled up to the curb, Turner felt an unexpected nervousness. When the boy stepped out, dressed in his best shirt, the watch glinting softly on his wrist, the old man felt something inside him ease, as if the years of regret had been waiting for this moment to fade away. Ethan looked up at the building in awe. "You really named it after me?" he asked. Turner smiled. "After what you represent?" The boy grinned. "I didn't do anything special." "Oh, but you did," Turner said gently. "You reminded me that the smallest right choice can change a life, sometimes even two." They walked inside together. The air smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Classrooms were filled with desks, computers, and books, things Ethan had only dreamed of having. Turner turned to him. "Would you like to help me run this place someday?" Ethan's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just a kid." "Not just a kid," Turner said, smiling. "You're proof that honesty still exists." The boy looked down at the watch and then back at him. "Then I'll do my best, sir. I promise." Turner placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's all I ever hoped to hear." And as they stood in that bright new hall, it felt as if time itself had begun again. Years passed quietly, like the ticking of the watch that had started it all. Ethan grew taller, stronger, wiser. The Ethan Foundation flourished, helping hundreds of children find their way, children who, like him, had once believed that life had forgotten them. And through it all, William Turner watched with pride, guiding the boy who had become more like a son than a stranger. Every week, Ethan visited the mansion on the hill. They would share tea, talk about school, about dreams, about the people they could still help. Turner's hair had turned silver, his steps slower, but his eyes shone brighter than they had in decades. One summer evening, as the sun poured gold across the garden, Turner handed Ethan a small velvet box. "I want you to have this," he said softly. Ethan opened it. Inside lay a new watch, elegant but simple, engraved with the words, "Time belongs to those who use it well." Ethan's throat tightened. "I can't take this." Turner smiled. "You already did, years ago, when you chose honesty over need. This one is just a reminder." They sat in silence, listening to the wind move through the trees. After a while, Turner said, "When I die, don't mourn me. Just keep the foundation alive. Make sure others get the same chance I gave you." Ethan nodded, unable to speak. When Turner passed away months later, the city mourned a great philanthropist. But Ethan mourned a man who had taught him the true meaning of wealth. At the memorial, he looked at the old watch on his wrist, still ticking faithfully, and he whispered, "I'll keep my promise." For in the end, time had given them both what they needed most: redemption.